Hello, I'm Sarah Brooks, Program Director for the Consortium for Public Education. What is the 5 Whys? The 5 Whys is a questioning process used to determine the root cause of a problem by simply asking why 5 times. When a countermeasure is determined, it is then put into place to prevent the problem from occurring. A countermeasure is different than a solution because it is an action or set of actions that actively prevents the problem from occurring. A solution can sometimes just address the symptom. However, don't get caught up in the nuances of the two words. Just keep it in mind when you use the method. Make sure your solution or countermeasure is worded as an action and in a way which stops the problem from occurring. The 5 Whys is part of the empathize phase of design. This method was developed by Sakichi Toyota in the 1930s. Sakichi Toyota was a Japanese industrialist, inventor, and founder of Toyota Industries. This method is still used at Toyota today and often pairs with their Go and See philosophy. Go and See is a decision-making technique based on what is actually happening and not on what is thought to be happening. Why is the 5 Whys a helpful method? The 5 Whys is most effective when used with people who have the most in-depth knowledge of a problem, typically from the perspective of the user. This method can be used most effectively in solving simple or moderately difficult problems. And it reveals when an individual has not taken a necessary action, but does so without assigning blame to that individual. It can identify organizational issues or areas where a process needs to be improved. First step is to assemble a team of individuals who have an in-depth knowledge of a problem. Depending on your team and/or the time you have to devote to this, having one team member act as a facilitator to keep the team on track and identifying countermeasures could be needed. The team should be able to easily collaborate in the same space, whether that is virtually or in person. Step 2, determine the exact problem your team is trying to solve. Observe the problem in action and develop a problem statement. Write the problem statement in a place where the entire team can easily view it. So for example, our staff members have not integrated the students' new one-to-one Chromebooks into their curriculum. Step 3 would be to ask the first why. Why is this problem occurring? Why isn't this process working effectively? Make sure the answers identified are based in fact. If they are not, this method can become a process for deductive reasoning, which will produce a large amount of hypothetical answers and no clear path to implementing a countermeasure. So, our staff members have not integrated the students' new one-to-one Chromebooks into their curriculum. Well, why? Because staff do not know how to integrate the Chromebooks into their curriculum. Our next step would be to ask why 4 more times. Make sure to frame the question as a response to the previous answer. Because staff do not know how to integrate the Chromebooks into their curriculum. Well, why is that? Because staff are not familiar with the apps and programs on the Chromebooks. Well, why is that? Because staff have not had time to learn how to implement the apps and programs into their curriculum. Step 5 is to know when to stop asking why. Your team will know when to stop because you no longer are producing any helpful responses. An effective countermeasure should be identified by this time. Identify and address the root cause of the problem. So develop and agree as a team upon a countermeasure to stop the problem from occurring. For example, our identified countermeasure for this particular problem is provide grade-level PD on Chromebook apps and programs, including examples of how to use these tools with curriculum. Well, what happens when there is more than one answer to a why? If your team happened to identify more than one answer to Step 3, apply Step 4 and Step 5 to each answer that was given in Step 3 until the team has identified another countermeasure. This will give you multiple countermeasures to apply to one identified problem. So for example, we currently have identified one countermeasure to our identified problem above, providing grade-level PD on Chromebook apps and programs, including examples of how to use these tools with curriculum. However, the team also found that one of the reasons why staff members have not integrated the students' new one-to-one Chromebooks into their curriculum is because the Chromebooks need to be set up for classroom use. Well, why is this? Because there are apps, programs, and specific functionalities that are not applicable to student use outside of school. Another countermeasure has been identified. Identify a time and a date for IT department or Chromebook provider to set up specific classroom apps, programs, and functionality on all student Chromebooks. Once you've identified your countermeasures, put them in place and monitor the results. See how effectively your countermeasure has decreased or eliminated your initial problem. Sometimes countermeasures need to be modified or replaced entirely. If this happens, it's a good idea to repeat the 5 whys to make sure your team has identified the correct root cause of your problem. How can the 5 whys be used in education? Educators and students can build empathy and understanding through questioning and can identify where pain points are in their district, in their school, classroom procedures, approaches, and policies. If you're looking for another method to use to identify pain points, check out journey mapping. Doing this in person versus virtual. This is a great method because it's easily used in both formats. Your team should have access, regardless of whether they are in person or virtual, to a collaborative space. In-person tools might include a whiteboard, a large blank wall, butcher, or flip chart paper, stickies of 2 different colors to differentiate between the whys and the answers, and markers to clearly see what is written. Virtual tools might include video conferencing platforms to allow for verbal or written communication between team members, as well as the use of a collaborative virtual whiteboard and workspaces, such as Google Docs, Jamboard, or Padlet. Whichever way your team chooses to function, it is important to make sure that the team can clearly see the visual work being done, and that they are able to clearly communicate with one another. Whether in paper or digital form, data used as evidence for answers should be organized and easily referenced at any given time. Tips and tricks. Remember, the number of 5 of the 5 whys method is really just a suggestion. The team might need more or less opportunities to ask why before they arrive at the root cause of a problem. The idea is to stop asking why when there are no longer useful answers. Identify the answers to each why, which are based in fact, not in feeling or guesses. If time is needed to seek out facts or data as evidence for a particular answer, pause as a team to do so. To review, the 5 whys is most effective when used with people who have the most in-depth knowledge of a problem. It is best applied to simple or moderately complex problems. And it is important to identify answers to the whys that are based in fact, not on feeling. Thank you!